Those who have been in a coma, what was it like? I was in a medically induced coma for about a week. The coma itself is not much to talk about. There is just a gap in your memory, even from before it happened. I don't even remember the accident that brought me there in the first place. Waking up from it is a much different story though. Since I was fully dosed by painkillers and sedatives and whatnot, I was basically high as a kite, and since the trauma I suffered was very serious, my brain constructed very stressful, vivid nightmares I remember to this day. Do you think your brain was trying to wake you up? I'm not really sure. It was more like the shallow sleep just before you wake, when you're semi-aware of your surroundings but you're also half dreaming. The former made me realise I'm in the hospital and that something bad happened. Could not figure out what though. The latter, combined with the said meds, made the experience utterly terrifying. But yes, at some moment I realised that I need to wake up, but I didn't know how. Also, there were several timelines concurrently going on in my head, as crazy as it may sound, and I could not determine which one is the correct one to wake into. Now that is a terrifying thought. I had a motorcycle wreck a few years ago. Someone texting blew a stop sign and I ended up T-boning them. Not sure if coma is the correct term, but I was definitely unconscious for 2 days. Honestly, just felt like the worst, least refreshing nap in the history of naps. Had the wreck on a Sunday, woke up sometime Tuesday afternoon, evening, and asked if the bike was okay. It wasn't. I'd love a bike one day, but stories like this always scare me off them. My dad used to live in Vietnam and ride with his mates, and the amount of horror stories has scared the out of me. My wife was in a coma for about a month. At first I didn't bring the kids up because of how she looked, but in the third week her colour was closer to normal and there was less stuff going on, as she was pretty stable compared to the first 2 weeks. Anywho, I had told the kids that while mom wasn't responsive, there was a chance she could hear us, so they should be as brave as they can and sound as happy as they can. I described to them everything I thought that might spook them, from the tubes and wires to things beeping randomly and doctors and nurses coming and going. They were awesome. Even in the initial shock at seeing her with the ventilator, they were vocally loving, hugged and patted, held her hand, etc. We sat in the room a while and just talked. At one point I asked the kids what their favourite vacation was. Instead of our Disney and Universal Studios trips, they both agreed it was the road trip we took from Vegas down to Arizona, driving all over and seeing all the incredible sights. We talked about rides and amusements in Vegas, then Hoover Dam, the Grand Canyon, the Painted Desert, cave dwellings, petrified forests, silly road stops, a cheap motel we stayed in Flagstaff. We laughed and cried, just a little. It was as nice as it could be. They kissed her goodbye, saying, "See you soon." My wife heard it all, but in a hallucinatory way. She now has, to this day, near 10 years later, a vivid memory of a second Arizona vacation she went on with us. She even asked me early on after she woke up if we had gone on a vacation recently. Her mind went through every detail we talked about and even added onto it as if it all actually happened and the memories of it are as real as any. That is really, really sweet. There was a kid named Martin Pistorius who fell into a coma for 12 years, but his mind woke up 2 years into it. However, he was unable to speak or move, and everyone believed he was a vegetable at best. This wasn't the case. His mind was fully there. For over a decade, he was mistreated in facilities that played Barney repeats every single day for years without him being able to look away. True mental torture. He was also physically and sexually abused on top of that. At one point he couldn't stop throwing up, so the nurses tube fed him from his own vomit. His parents were unaware of all of this and tried adapting the best they could. In some of the lowest moments he remembers his mother telling him she wishes he would just die, yet all he could feel was compassion for how she felt. Eventually someone who cared enough realised he was responsive enough and got him the help he needed, and now he has a wife and kids, talks like Stephen Hawking and is a computer programmer. Really shows how you can still emerge from the deepest, darkest places of life. If anyone is wondering, it happened to him due to cryptococcal meningitis. Fungus covered his brain and spinal cord. The disease comes from soil with infected bird droppings being inhaled. One day he was just an innocent 12-year-old playing outside, only for his life to be changed because of simply breathing in some kicked up dirt. Glad he came out on top in the end. I was in a very short coma, 6 days after a brain hemorrhage. I recall nothing during the coma. I have a fuzzy understanding of my first week or two after waking up, having pieced it together by the stories I was told, and memories of the days leading up to it were temporarily wiped out, though they have since returned. This was over a decade ago, so take this with a grain of salt. My memory in general is imperfect at best. Completely understandable, given, the coma. I was in a coma for 3 days following a serious cycling accident, medically induced. I woke up with zero recollection of why I was there or what was said while I was out. It is easily the scariest situation I found myself in, but I can't say I remember it. I woke up to my mom and dad in the hospital with me and my body in traction of some sort, and that was way scarier to me. I've tried to explain it a few times, but honestly, it's life-changing. It's one of those experiences that are almost impossible to explain, but you're a different person afterwards, not just because of the brain damage, on my part, or the physical therapy you need to learn basic motor functions. It's like visiting another realm of reality.